After the sudden and heartbreaking passing of Bishop Carlton Pearson, a heavy silence seemed to settle over his legacy. That is, until now. Out of the blue, Gina Gauthier, his estranged ex-wife, has come forward with revelations that no one could have anticipated. Long-buried truth, hidden pain, and a narrative the church never wanted made public. What she's just revealed is shaking the entire gospel community, and believe me, you're going to want to hear this. Carlton Pearson was once among the most commanding voices in the American gospel scene. A bishop, a trailblazer, and a man bold enough to challenge tradition, but behind the spotlight, behind the international influence, was a storm quietly building in his private world. Now, after his tragic passing, his former wife, Gina Gauthier, is finally breaking her silence. After years of keeping quiet, Gina is now ready to tell her side of the story. And what she shares rewrites everything we thought we knew about the man, the ministry, and his dramatic fall from grace. In this video, we're going deep examining the collapse of a gospel empire from the inside, from hidden secrets to painful confessions, from spiritual wounds to the emotional aftermath. Gina suffered in silence for years. This is the side of Bishop Pearson's legacy that's rarely spoken of. We'll dig into what truly unfolded during their troubled marriage. Gina now claims the church went to great lengths to conceal just how Carlton's controversial teachings may have affected not only his career but their family too. And the recent voice memo she released,
it's left people absolutely speechless. You're not going to believe what was happening behind the curtain. This is where things start to unravel. Before scandal took over his legacy, Bishop Carlton Pearson was on a meteoric rise of gospel. Forceful of passion, vision, and a message that drew crowds by the thousands. Born in 1953 in San Diego, California, Pearson was brought up in a strict Pentecostal environment and would later become a protege of none other than Oral Roberts. He wasn't just any preacher, he was a spiritual phenomenon. By the 1980s and 90s, he had created a megachurch movement through his Higher Dimensions Evangelistic Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. People came in droves to hear him speak. He mingled with gospel giants and political figures alike. His massive Azusa conferences were broadcast on TBN and featured the likes of T.D. Jakes and Donnie McClurkin. But as the spotlight intensified, so did the questions within. Carlton Pearson began to rethink the very doctrines he once stood behind. One night, while watching footage from the Rwandan genocide, Pearson claimed he heard God speak to him, telling him that hell wasn't real. That moment marked the beginning of what he would call the gospel of inclusion, and from there, everything began to fall apart. Church leaders turned their backs on him, major organizations labeled him a heretic. His congregation started to shrink, his finances took a dive, and longtime friends began to publicly distance themselves. But what people didn't see, what the public was never told, was the impact all of this had on his marriage. Behind closed doors, his wife, Gina Gauthier, a former life coach and political aide, was quietly weathering the storm. As the church world turned its back on Carlton, the pressure started bearing down on their family. And here's the part no one ever mentioned. While the world dissected and debated his theology, nobody paid attention to the woman slowly fading into the background, not until now. Before she was ever introduced to the public as the wife of a controversial bishop, Gina Gauthier had already built a name for herself. She was a brilliant woman with an impressive resume in political strategy, coaching, and psychology. Gina once worked as an aide inside the Clinton White House. She wasn't just a bishop's wife, she was poised, educated, and powerful. When she married Carlton Pearson in 1993, many believed it was a divine match, a bold spiritual leader paired with a sharp, articulate woman with strong political instincts. But behind the dazzling curtain of religious celebrity, their marriage was taking a very different shape. By many accounts, Gina was quiet and reserved throughout most of Bishop Pearson's public ministry. She rarely addressed the congregation, never publicly questioned her husband's beliefs, and consistently upheld the image of a faithful, supportive spouse. But as Gina recently revealed, that silence wasn't a choice, it was survival. In her emotional message following Bishop Pearson's passing, she dropped a powerful revelation she'd been silenced for years, not only by the church's expectations but by her husband himself. According to Gina, as Carlton's influence grew, She was often pushed to the sidelines, expected to remain in the background, and discouraged from questioning his decisions, whether theological or personal. In a now viral interview clip making its rounds on social media, Gina said, "I was groomed to be silent. You smile, wave, and look pretty. But when the lights go off, you're left holding the entire weight of the ministry's image, and no one ever asks if you're okay." She claims that as Carlton's teachings grew more controversial and he faced rejection from much of the evangelical community, the consequences weren't just felt in the public eye, they were deeply personal. Inside their home, Gina says, things began to unravel: spiritual tension, emotional distance, and painful betrayal. She hinted that she had disagreed with many of Carlton's theological views, not only about hell, but about other spiritual issues that left her feeling more and more isolated. She even suggested that Carlton would sometimes use spiritual manipulation to rationalize decisions, leaving her feeling dismissed, powerless, and unseen. One of the most striking parts of Gina's statement was this: "I kept quiet out of respect, but silence can turn into a cage. And after all these years, I have nothing left to lose." According to Gina, the further Carlton descended into religious exile, the more unstable their marriage became. She claims that counseling was often dismissed, major issues were brushed aside, and emotional neglect became their new reality. She described herself as spiritually starved and left emotionally adrift, a woman living in the shadow of a man the world either idolized or condemned. And the most painful part? She says no one ever asked for her version of events, not the church, not close friends, not even the people who once called her First Lady. Now, years after their official divorce and following his death, Gina is finally stepping forward with her truth. But what she reveals next is even more shocking, because Gina didn't just speak about emotional neglect and manipulation. She hinted at a deeper betrayal, one that stunned even some of Pearson's closest: confidence. By the time Gina Gauthier filed for divorce in 2015, the cracks in her relationship with Bishop Carlton Pearson were far too obvious to hide. And yet, even then, the public had no clue just how serious and painful those cracks really were. This wasn't just a theological clash or ministry burnout. According to Gina's newest revelations, the betrayal she suffered was deeply personal and far more devastating. In a statement that quickly went viral among gospel circles and church commentary platforms, Gina alluded to multiple acts of infidelity moments where she says she discovered Carlton's emotional and physical unfaithfulness, even at the height of his spiritual influence. "You think you're married to a man of God," she said in one interview, "but you slowly begin to realize he's become a man of his own gospel." Gina explained she wasn't just struggling with church hurt, she was enduring heartbreak. Inside her own home, she describes uncovering suspicious late-night messages, hearing whispers from insiders within the church, and witnessing what she referred to as unholy connections, encounters that raised serious alarms, not just as a wife, but as a woman watching her marriage crumble before her eyes. While Gina chose to remain respectful and avoided naming anyone directly, she made it clear she believes there are people in Carlton's inner circle, even those within the ministry, who not only knew about his actions but helped conceal them. These weren't random temptations or fleeting mistakes. She claims they were calculated affairs, covered up and allowed to continue because of Carlton's influence and reputation. Even more troubling, Gina says she was repeatedly gaslighted. Whenever she tried to confront these issues, she was told she was being overly emotional, not spiritual enough, or that she was simply jealous of the ministry. According to her, this manipulation made her doubt her own instincts, a kind of psychological warfare that chipped away at her identity over time. "He was everyone's bishop," she said, "but I was the woman who shared his bed, and I saw sides of him the pulpit would never dare reveal." Gina then described a pivotal moment, one late-night conversation after a conference, when Carlton, she says, finally admitted to being involved in an inappropriate relationship. But instead of repentance, what followed, according to Gina, was a spiritual rationalization. Carlton allegedly confessed that being rejected by the Christian world had worn him down, and that forming human connections was his way of coping with the pain of isolation. That moment, Gina says, was what shattered her spirit. She didn't walk away right then like many women in ministry marriages. She stayed. She prayed. She held on to hope. She even tried to forgive. But as time passed, the weight of betrayal, combined with spiritual neglect, left her feeling completely invisible. And it wasn't just the infidelity, it was the betrayal of trust. She thought she was building a kingdom alongside a man of God. Instead, she now says she became a pawn in a narrative that prioritized public image over personal integrity. And, even more heartbreaking? She claims that certain spiritual advisors urged her to stay silent, warning her that going public could destroy the ministry or damage Carlton's legacy. They told me I'd come off as bitter, as vengeful as just. Another scorned woman, she said. But they didn't see me as a person, just a broken wife, a betrayed soul, a human being. And just when you think things couldn't get any more complicated, Gina dropped another bombshell, something that has left the gospel world absolutely stunned. She revealed the existence of a private audio recording made during the final, unraveling stages of their marriage. This voice memo, which she has not released publicly in full reportedly, captures a conversation between her and Carlton, where he allegedly admits to manipulating church narratives in order to conceal the truth about their separation, all while maintaining his polished public image. Even as their family was quietly falling apart in the background, portions of the recording have already started to circulate, and if they're proven authentic, they could raise very serious questions about who knew what and when. But here's the shocking part: they don't want the public to know. Gina insists that this was never about revenge. She didn't come forward for attention or to tear down the legacy of a man who can no longer defend himself. According to her, she's speaking now because his death left her with unresolved pain, a truth buried too long beneath the weight of titles, colors, and cheering crowds. I loved him, she said. I married him with pure intentions. But even good women grow tired of pretending. As startling as Gina Gauthier's revelations may be, perhaps what's even more disturbing is the deafening wall of silence that surrounded her pain for so many years. A silence that, according to her, wasn't just maintained by Bishop Pearson himself, but also by the very institutions that claim to stand for truth, healing, and accountability. For generations, the Black church has stood as a powerful force spiritually, politically, and socially. But for women like Gina, that same institution became a barrier, one that protected men in power while forcing those who suffered behind closed doors into the shadows. Gina recalls countless moments where she reached out, turning to respected church leaders, mentors, elders, even bishops, searching for guidance, compassion, and someone who would listen. Instead, what she says she encountered was denial, avoidance, or worse, blame. They didn't want to hear it, she explained. They told me I needed to protect the ministry, that I was part of something greater than myself. But what about me? She asked. What about my soul, my sanity? One senior church figure allegedly told her, a good first lady knows how to suffer in silence. It was a statement that left her speechless, emotionally wrecked, and deeply shaken. Gina's story shines a harsh light on an uncomfortable reality many religious institutions seem more invested in protecting their image than pursuing real restoration. When spiritual leaders fall short, the instinct often isn't to hold them accountable, but to protect the brand. In Bishop Pearson's case, that culture of silence went even deeper, intensified by his controversial theological views. Once he began preaching the gospel of inclusion, denying the existence of hell, and promoting universal salvation, the evangelical world turned on him swiftly. He was branded a heretic. Major organizations distanced themselves. Christian television networks cut ties. And still, the focus remained centered on his theological rebellion, not on the emotional wreckage left behind for those closest to him. In many ways, Gina became collateral damage. Her pain faded into the background, her voice ignored. And it wasn't only the leadership that chose to look away. Even regular church members, the very people who once called her First Lady, who showed up to her women's events, who embraced her after Sunday services, many of them disappeared when controversy struck. She says she was abandoned not once, but twice. First by her husband, then by the same community that once promised to stand by her side. There's this illusion that the church is a refuge for women, but all too often, women are told to pray their way through it, to stay silent, to smile through the suffering. That's not safety, she said in a recent sit-down interview. That's spiritual abuse. And here's where the story turns even more heartbreaking. Gina admits there were times she blamed herself for not forgiving fast enough, for questioning her husband, for not submitting in the way the church culture often expects women in ministry to do. That internal guilt kept her bound in a cycle of silence and self-doubt until Pearson's death forced her to finally confront the truth she had buried for years. She also revealed that several church board members and spiritual advisors were fully aware of what was happening in her marriage. They had been told about the infidelity, the emotional absence, even the existence of voice recordings. But every time, she says, the message was the same: don't go public. Don't destroy the ministry. Don't damage a black man's legacy. That kind of rhetoric, according to Gina, is part of a much bigger issue within religious spaces, one where protecting the platform takes priority over protecting people, where titles matter more than truth. But now, after years of bearing that weight in silence, Gina says she's done hiding. The church failed me. The system failed me. But I will not fail myself ever again, she declared. This time, I choose to speak. And speak she has loud enough that her words are now resonating across social media, where thousands of women, especially former first ladies, ministry wives, and even female pastors, are beginning to share eerily similar stories of silence, sacrifice, and survival. A quiet wave is rising, one that's calling for accountability not just from individual leaders, but from the church systems that allowed the silence to grow unchecked. And here's where the hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore. Many of the same religious figures who exiled Carlton Pearson for preaching inclusion have continued to support and protect others, men with far darker histories involving abuse, scandal, and moral collapse, so long as they didn't challenge theological tradition. So the question must be asked: was Pearson truly condemned for his beliefs? Or was his downfall too threatening because it would have forced the church to confront its own dysfunction? Either way, Gina Gauthier has made it clear she's no longer protecting anyone's reputation. For her, this isn't about revenge. It's about truth, healing, and reclaiming her own story. But just when you think that's the end of it, wait until you hear what Gina recently revealed about Bishop Pearson's final days, and how, even in death, some secrets still refused to die. In the weeks leading up to Bishop Carlton Pearson's passing, most people assumed he was surrounded by love, forgiveness, and family. The public narrative painted a peaceful image of a man reflecting calmly on his legacy. Public statements described him as resting comfortably and embracing closure. But according to Gina Gauthier, that image tells only part of the truth, and the rest is far more complicated. In a quiet yet powerful interview shared just days after his passing, Gina revealed that she hadn't spoken to Carlton for months before he died. Their final conversation, she says, was cold, distant, and left painfully unresolved. Despite their years of marriage and shared family, there was no proper reconciliation, no apology, no moment of closure. Everyone talks about peace, she said, but not everyone gets to make peace before they die. And some wounds never truly heal. What she disclosed next left many stunned. Gina claimed there were behind-the-scenes discussions, legal, financial, even spiritual, that pointed to deeper tension between Carlton and those in his inner circle. She suggested that during his final year, the people closest to him were managing the narrative, carefully shielding the public from the more chaotic and troubling aspects of his decline. She emphasized this wasn't about bitterness, it was about justice. She believes that the image of a peaceful passing was partially staged, deliberately shaped to protect his legacy, while the pain that had long existed remained hidden beneath the surface. One particularly haunting moment came when she shared a private letter, one she says she never received directly from Carlton, but instead found through a third party years before his diagnosis. In that letter, according to Gina, he wrote, "I built a kingdom for others to follow, but I forgot the woman who helped build it with me." It's a sentence that has deeply resonated with listeners, a heartbreaking confession from a man who may have only realized the cost of ambition when it was too late to make things right. Gina didn't share the letter to gain sympathy. She shared it to shine light on the quiet, hidden grief that comes with stories left unfinished. Not every ending, she reminded us, comes with a bow or a final chapter wrapped in peace. She also opened up about the layered grief she now lives with, a painful mix of sadness, betrayal, nostalgia, and unanswered questions. Because in spite of everything, the betrayals, the loneliness, the silence, she admits she still loved him. Maybe not the man he became, but the man she once believed in. Grief is cruel when the love was complicated, she said. "I didn't cry just because he died. I cried because we never truly healed." But perhaps the most powerful part of Gina's story isn't what she revealed about Bishop Pearson, it's what she reclaimed for herself. After years of being ignored, silenced, and overlooked, Gina has finally found her voice. And she's not alone. Her courage has sparked a broader conversation about women in ministry, about spiritual accountability, about how the church handles brokenness and scandal, and about what true healing actually looks like for every Gina Gauthier out there. This isn't just a story about controversy or gossip. It's a mirror, it's a warning, and most of all, it's a call for change.